She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even ask for help. But if you looked closely, her eyes were telling a story. A story no one wanted to hear. People around her saw the smile she forced, the polite nods, the way she kept busy. Always doing something, always avoiding questions. They thought she was just shy, maybe tired. But there was something in the way she looked at the ground when someone spoke too loudly. Something in the way her hands shook when she reached for a glass. She didn't have bruises you could see. Not every scar leaves a mark you can touch. Asterisk, this isn't about a moment. It's about a pattern. A quiet, slow kind of pain that hides. In plain sight. She was the kind of person no one noticed until it was too late. But the signs were always there. In the silence, in the way she stopped laughing, in the way her eyes stopped shining. Asterisk, this is her story, not told through words, but through everything she couldn't say. From the outside, her life looked normal, maybe even good. She lived in a quiet street where neighbors nodded and smiled. People saw her walking to the store, folding laundry by the window, waving from the front porch. Her husband, always well-dressed, always polite. Together, they looked like a calm, happy couple, the kind that hosts small dinners and sends holiday cards. Asterisk, she smiled in pictures. Not the kind of smile that lights up your face, but the kind that says, I'm fine, even when you're not. At family gatherings, she listened more than she talked. She laughed when everyone else did. She answered questions with short, safe words. No one ever noticed the way her eyes dropped when someone mentioned home. Asterisk, inside the house, things felt different. Her mornings started with silence. Breakfast was quiet. Movements were careful. She walked like someone who didn't want to wake a sleeping dog. There were days when her sleeves were longer than usual. Days when makeup sat heavier under her eyes. But no one asked. No one looked too closely. Because everything seemed fine. Asterisk, this is where the truth hides, not in loud arguments or broken things, but in the quiet, polished image that covers the cracks. This is the world she lived in, every single day. At first, it didn't look like abuse. It started small. The kind of things people usually brush off. He didn't like when she stayed out too long with friends. He'd say things like, you should be home more, or they don't really care about you like I do. At first, she thought he just missed her. Maybe that was love. Asterisk, then came the little comments. You look tired. Why are you wearing that? You talk too much when we're out. She laughed it off at first. Told herself he was just stressed or trying to help. But slowly, those words started to stick. She stopped calling friends. She stayed quiet at dinners. She double-checked how she looked before coming downstairs. Asterisk, she began changing who she was, piece by piece, just to keep the peace. When she felt hurt, he'd say she was too sensitive. When she pulled away, he said she was cold. Somehow, it always became her fault. Asterisk, she felt confused more than scared. Like she was always doing something wrong, but never sure what it was. And no one else saw it because there were no raised voices, no slammed doors. Not yet. Just cold dinners and long silences. Missed phone calls and quiet tears in the bathroom. Asterisk, by the time she realized something was really wrong, she already felt alone. And that's how it started. Not with bruises, but with quiet control. Some nights, she just lay there, staring at the ceiling, holding her breath. Waiting. Not for a sound, not for a word, just for that shift in the air. That moment when things turned cold without warning. He didn't always yell. He didn't always hit. Sometimes it was the silence that did the most damage. The way he walked past her like she didn't exist. The way he slammed the door just hard enough to make her flinch. Asterisk, she started watching everything she did, how she spoke. How she stood, how she looked at him. Even her breathing felt too loud. She tiptoed through her own home like a stranger. She stopped playing music. She stopped laughing. She stopped being herself. Asterisk, the space around her felt heavier each day. Meals went untouched. Nights dragged on without sleep. She would sit at the edge of the bed, hands folded, eyes wide open, just listening, waiting for him to say something, or worse, say nothing at all. Asterisk, she wasn't just afraid of him anymore. She was afraid of herself, of forgetting who she used to be. Her reflection in the mirror didn't look familiar. The woman who used to dream, joke, and sing quietly while cooking was gone. Now, her eyes looked tired. Not just from crying, but from pretending. Pretending that everything was okay. Pretending she still mattered. Asterisk, and even when nothing happened, something always did. Her body stayed tense. Her mind stayed on edge. Each day, she felt herself slipping away, becoming smaller, quieter, invisible. The silence in the house grew, louder than any scream, and still, she said nothing. Because by then, she believed no one would listen anyway. That night felt different the moment the sun went down. The air in the house was heavy, but quiet, too quiet. He didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He didn't even walk in with anger on his face. That made it worse. The calm before something she couldn't name. Asterisk, she stood in the kitchen, frozen in place, holding a plate she never got to set down. He looked at her, not with rage, but with something colder, like she didn't matter anymore. She was tired, not just from the day, but from months of fear, of silence, of trying to survive in a home that didn't feel like one. Asterisk, he stepped closer. She didn't move. Not because she was brave, but because she had nothing left in her. No more running. No more shaking. No more pretending. Just stillness. Asterisk, he raised his hand slowly like he'd done before, but this time, she didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She didn't even blink. And in that tiny moment, a few seconds, maybe less, something shifted. Not in him. In her. Asterisk, she realized she couldn't take it anymore. That this wasn't just a bad night or a bad marriage. This was her life being swallowed whole. And if she didn't walk away, she would disappear in it completely. Asterisk, he lowered his hand. Maybe because he changed his mind. Maybe because he saw something different in her eyes that she didn't wait to find out. She didn't speak. She didn't explain. She simply turned around, walked to her room, and shut the door. Asterisk, that night. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep either. But for the first time in a long time, she was thinking not about surviving him, but about leaving him. And that thought, small as it was, lit something inside her that he couldn't reach. She didn't leave with a loud goodbye or a dramatic fight. There were no tears, no last-minute begging, no slammed doors. Just a quiet morning. The kind where the world feels still before it wakes up. She packed a small bag, not because she had a plan, but because she knew she couldn't stay. She moved slowly, calmly, like someone who had already left in her heart long before her feet followed. Asterisk, the sun hadn't even fully risen yet. The house was silent, but not in the way it used to be. This time, it wasn't fear holding her back. It was clarity. She slipped on her shoes, opened the door gently, and walked out without a sound. Asterisk, she didn't leave a note. She didn't owe him one. The silence she left behind said enough. Asterisk, each step she took felt like both freedom and fear. She didn't know where she'd go or what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, she was choosing herself. Not the version of her he tried to break, but the one who survived it. Asterisk, her silence wasn't weakness. It was the way she stayed alive until she could finally live. Healing didn't come fast. There were no sudden smiles, no perfect endings. Some days still felt heavy. Some nights, the memories crept back in. But little by little, she found herself again. In the sound of her own breath, in quiet mornings with no shouting, and feeling safe when she closed her eyes. Asterisk, she didn't talk about everything that happened, not with everyone, but she didn't have to. The people who truly listened understood her silence. Her pain no longer needed to explain itself. Asterisk, her eyes were still different, but not lost, stronger. Like someone who's seen the worst and lived through it. Asterisk, she began to write. She sat with women who had faces like hers. She didn't tell them what to do. She just listened, because sometimes that's all someone needs. Asterisk, she wasn't trying to forget what happened. She was learning how to live with it. And in doing that, she was slowly becoming whole again, in her own quiet way. There are people around us who smile, just enough to seem okay, who show up, answer politely, and go home quietly. We don't always see what they carry because they've learned how to hide it. Sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of habit, sometimes because no one ever really asked. Asterisk, if you see someone like her, someone whose eyes look tired, whose laugh feels forced, whose silence stretches a little too long, don't look away. Don't assume they're fine just because they haven't said otherwise. Asterisk, silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's pain with no safe place to land. Asterisk, she didn't tell her story with words. She told it in all the ways she stopped being herself, in the ways she disappeared a little more each day. But now she's here, still quiet, but not invisible. Still healing, but no longer alone. Asterisk, her eyes said everything. You just had to look. Asterisk, if you or someone you know is living in silence, please reach out. Help is there, and no one deserves to stay hidden.